Okay, I've started the recording and it is 6 o'clock. Today is October 30th, 2019, on a cold and dreary evening here in uh, Frisco, Texas at Collin College. And it is colder than a bucket of penguin, and it's cold. Um, Today I wanted to talk briefly about Oracle. And we've been working with SQL Server, and I wanted to talk about how Oracle is essentially the same sort of an animal. Let me check and make sure that I'm bouncing. Yes, my icon's bouncing, so I'm talking. Um, and Oracle is the same sort of thing. Now, I do not recommend necessarily that you rush out and download Oracle and install it on your machine. Oracle is a monster. If you thought SQL Server was bad, Oracle will take up your whole disk. And it's the thing about Oracle is that you're getting for free a $100,000 software package if you bought it to use in industry. You're getting the Express Edition, which limits you to smaller tables, but not very much smaller. I mean, you got everything you need to learn. I think you can have 50,000 rows or something in the table. I don't know, 5,000. I don't know how many rows you can have, but there is a limit to it. And so what you do is you download which one you get it. You can get it for Linux. So if you want to use it in Apple, you can. So you download the Linux, and you can download the for Windows 64. Recommend you get a machine if you're going to bother, if you're going to invest the time to learn Oracle. Then go ahead and invest in a, doesn't need to be a state-of-the-art high-speed machine. I would get a computer that's dedicated to Oracle, and you're going to download him. And then I'm not going to download him because I get to sit here and wait. Besides, I've already downloaded it. Right? So when I download, I'm going to get this zip file here, Oracle XE 18.4, version 18.4, Windows 64, and then I'm going to unzip him. When I unzip him, I will get these files, a whole bunch of files, and on and on and on and on. And I will also get a file down here that says setup. Guess what I'm going to execute? I'm going to execute setup. Okay. Setup will run and run and run and run. You do have to, you execute it once. You must be an administrator on the box. Just having your user has to be the administrator. You cannot just say okay to make changes to the box. The user that you run this in, as you're logged in, you must be the administrator. So you have to have that password. Saying okay to make changes doesn't count here. For some reason, I found that I had to run setup, and then it would run for 30 seconds or so and then quit. And go, what's going on? Then I run it again and it works. I don't know why that is. Just a bug, I think. But anyway, when I run the setup, it runs and it runs and it runs and it runs, and probably 45 minutes later, it gives you the message. You have to put in a password. Pay particular attention to the password. Oracle passwords do not accept special characters. Okay. So make sure you're going to use a fairly long password for your protection in the real world. But they don't. You can't put. You can put underscores in them, but you can't put dollar signs and @ signs and things like that in them. At least you couldn't once upon a time. The problem with it is it runs and it runs and it runs and it runs, and then when it finally gets to the end, it bombs because you have a bad password. So I use only characters in my password, but I make them long so they will be difficult to hack. And then when it finally works, I get in my little world, start LMNO, O for Oracle, Oracle DB 18, version 18, home 1. And I drop this down and I go down to SQL Plus. SQL Plus is my SQL. Now, this one doesn't have most of this stuff up here is just configuration stuff. Lets you configure your networks and stuff like that. SQL Plus is your Oracle. What is that? What are we looking at there? Looks like a DOS window. It is a DOS window. Okay, it's a Telnet window. It's a Telnet secure shell window. That's all it is. And so essentially we're connected to port 1521 of the Oracle server via Telnet. I mean, of course it's encrypted so that people can't just eavesdrop on you easily. And that's what we got. Now it's a very brutal little interface. It is Telnet. Now I strongly recommend that you have a version of Notepad open on the side. Open Notepad over there because you're going to do your typing in Notepad. Doing your typing in here is brutal. Okay. A couple of things about this. As you type in here, if you remember why I was telling you on in SQL Server, don't have a space, an empty line anywhere in your query. This is why right here, if you have any empty lines in your query, it just kicks you out and you get to retype the whole thing again if you're typing. So you'll type, I'm going to type over in Notepad, but it's saying enter my username. Okay. Now to start off, and your username, your first username, the first one that you need to know about is the name system, SYSTEM, system. And system has the password that you gave it. You can either put a slash in the password or you can press enter and then type in the password. Okay. I entered a password. So it says enter the password. Now it's not going to do anything. Oops. Oh no. There. Oh, I was afraid I'd forgotten the password. So I finally got connected. They are difficult to get into if you don't have the password. So I'm connected and I'm in. And the system password is the one that you want to protect. So system is your SA user. And so now I'm in as the administrator of this system, and I need to do a couple of things. First, I need to connect. I need to create my user. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and open my Notepad++. I don't know what this is. Okay. I could put it in like that, connect system/password, but then I would reveal the password to someone who was watching, so you guys aren't allowed to watch the password. Now, we're going to do this one time, and if you Google it, you can find this. I had to Google it. This wasn't, back in the old days when I used to do this, I didn't have to put this in. But one time at the beginning, you have to set up your system configuration. So I'm going to paste this in. Paste, alter session, set, Oracle script is true, and it says, comes back and says, okay, done. Now, I don't have to do that again. Okay. I'm going to create my user. So I'm going to create the user. I'm going to create my user as SW Smith. Create user. As usual, it is not case sensitive, but I, out of habit, just type my reserved words in uppercase. Create user. I'm going to create my user as SW Smith. Identified by. I'm going to give him the same password that I had over here. Then that way I won't get too confused. It does require a semicolon at the end. Oracle is fussy about that semicolon. That's why I've been fussy about it in our little environment that wasn't fussy about it. Oracle is fussy about empty lines. I'll show you that in a minute. If you put an empty line inside of an Oracle query that you're writing, or a create table or something like that, if it hits an empty line, it kicks you out and you get to type it again. And you have to start all over again if you're typing here. So I'm going to press enter and it says user created. Now I have two more and I'll be happy to put these out there. I have to do a couple of grants. As the system, I'm going to grant connect to SW Smith. In other words, I'm going to give the user SW Smith the right to connect to my wonderful database. And then I'm going to grant resource to SW Smith. And that says that SW Smith can own tables and procedures and stuff like that. And he or she is allowed to create stuff like procedures, like tables, like sequences, okay? And so if I execute this, paste, the grants have succeeded. Yay. I am now a full-fledged user, or SW Smith is now a full-fledged user of this database. Remember, there were 3 commands. I had to create the user, grant connect, and grant resource. Grant connect and grant resource can come in any order. Of course, you have to create the user first. Now I am ready to connect. So I'm just going to issue the command connect. SW Smith / my password, or I could just say connect SW Smith and then type in my password without putting it on the screen. Lots of times you don't want to put it on the screen. So this should connect me. I am now no longer connected as the administrator. I am now just a plain old user, SW Smith. Okay. Now what can I do? I can go wild. I mean, Oracle is a fairly pure version of SQL. Oracle and SQL Server run the same program called SQL. Anything that ran in your 1309 class that you wrote, your subselects, your table joins, your inner join, your outer join, all that jazz, works exactly the same way in SQL for Oracle. A few things that don't. Number one, their if then else is different. If then else is not part of SQL. If then else is part of TSQL. It's different here. What else? Go does not exist in Oracle. Go is different. What else is different? Dates are slightly different. So the way you do a date, there is no try convert in Oracle. There is no if exists in Oracle. So there's some things about TSQL I like a lot better than Oracle. For the most part, I tend to like Oracle a little better, except for this crummy little editor here. But hey, this is why they make Notepad++. And I don't have to copy and paste it over here. I can just come over here and run it and say, okay, run that file, and it'll just run the file. So I save the file and I come over here and say, okay, run that file. And then I go figure out what went wrong. And it shows me all my errors. I'll show you to do that in a minute. And so I'm ready now. What could I type? I could say create table and give it a name. And then I could open parentheses, and I could copy any of that stuff that we did in 1309. I just copy it, paste it right in, and it works just fine. Yeah. Oh, is there a graphic? Is there a GUI? Of course. Oracle's got all the whistles and bells. So there isn't one here. This is the most rudimentary place. So this is where everybody starts. It's like you need to start with with a standard transmission. I mean, everybody should start. Can you drive a standard transmission, Sarah? No. Oh well, I won't go there then. So we say you start shifting gears, and your clutch and all that stuff, and then after that you appreciate an automatic transmission. So is there a graphical user interface for it? Absolutely, there is. All kinds of graphical user stuff for it. Not only do we have a graphical user interface, but we have our own little version of Visual Basic. Now, the nice thing about it's not Visual Basic, it's called Oracle Forms, and it's essentially Visual Basic from Oracle, which is completely different. But there's some nice things about it. There's some things I really do like about Oracle Forms. Let me go ahead with this. Now, let's, since we're here, I'm not going to go real long tonight since we're under a freeze warning, and there's not very many people here tonight. Who do I have with me online?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
You said there's no Go, so does Oracle SQL require some other, command that after a create?
No. Well, yes and no, and I'll show you. There is a special symbol that you put that is kind of like Go. It says, okay, execute it. For the most part, you're in this environment, you're just in a very brutal little telnet secure shell session. So it's kind of like going back to DOS. Well, you are back in DOS, except you're in SQL instead. So you can create a table. Let's go look at a SQL program for this. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open a program here. Okay, here's a program. This one. Hello world, create or replace procedure. Let me go ahead and put him in there. Paste. I did not have to paste. I could have run him straight from that file. So it says create or replace, and we are used to saying in SQL Server create or alter. This is different. This is not SQL. This is the wrapper language. So we have been writing code in what they call TSQL. So this is the programming language known as PL/SQL. Programming language, procedural language. It is a language that is derived from the programming language known as Ada, also known as Pascal, also known as Modula, and others. Try to replace procedure, hello world, instead of is, I say as. Begin. What is it? Okay, begin. This is the print DBMS output.put line, hello world. Okay, so that's a little different than print, but think of it as print. And then end. Okay. When I press enter, notice that it just keeps giving me numbers. Say, what is it? It's waiting on the command of, it's waiting on my command of execution. So Tracy was just asking me a minute ago about, is there a command of execution? Yes, there is. And that is the slash character. When it gets that slash character, it does it. So that says execute it. I always forget that one. Procedure created. Now, how do I run a procedure? Well, the same way I ran it anyplace else. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to turn on my output. I need to turn the output on. Don't worry, I'm not going to put this on a test or anything, but it's just, okay, it's on. So the server output, if you don't turn it on, it won't talk to this window. And now I'm ready to execute. Hello world. And it printed for me, hello world. Oh, I'm just, isn't that just too cool? Why, that's the slickest thing since boogers on a brass doorknob. Okay, so let's go look at a more complicated program. And here I'm going to open RPS, rock, paper, scissors, and this is rock, paper, scissors that somebody did a long time ago. I don't know. It was one of them I had laying around on a disk. I don't know whether I wrote it or a student wrote it. Looks like a student probably wrote it. That's weird. Couple of things to notice. The varchar 2 thing. Let me go search, replace varchar 2 with, back in the old days, of Oracle, they had varchar just like everybody else, and then they kind of painted themselves into a corner, and they let a little bit too much information leak out, so they had to change the name of their varchar. So they had varchar, and then they had varchar 2. I think they have since fixed that, so now you just simply use varchar. So it's the same and in all of them. So it's the same whether we use it in MySQL or Oracle, or all of these guys are the same. So when we are drop table rounds, we do not have an if exists. You know, we don't have an if object ID is not null, drop table rounds. Be nice, but basically we just get to see an error message. It doesn't bother me any. There are ways to suppress it, but it doesn't cause the batch to abort or anything. Over in SQL Server, if we tried to execute it, what would happen is we would drop out of our execution and drop down to the next go, and some things wouldn't get created or something. So this one isn't as bad. If I get an error up here on line 1, I just get an error on line 1, it errors out, it goes to line 2. In SQL Server, if you get an error on line 1, it just quits. So I can hear getting an error when you say drop table rounds. If it says, you can't do that because there isn't any such table name drop, don't worry about it. Just let it go ahead and error out. Drop table, drop sequence, then I create my sequences. I create my table players. I see that this one probably wasn't created by me because this person did not name the constraint. He just put, he or she or whoever, just said varchar what is that? 16, primary key. A little lazy in my opinion. I would have taken off a point or two for that. But I told them to, well, okay, maybe not in a advanced class. Primary, you can get away with it. Again, down here on line 22, they notice that when they do the foreign key, and this is something that you can do in Oracle that you cannot do in SQL Server. PID, P1 ID, references, player's PID. It creates a foreign key to player's PID. If they are named the same, if players had a field named P1 ID, I could just say references players. I didn't even need to say this unless it was different. Some people like that. People who like terse code. Personally, I tend to get a little bit verbose in my code. I don't say that you have to agree with me. Let's see if I can find one table of rounds. Here is one, GID references games. Why? Well, games has to have one named GID. Now, if you filled it all the way out and you said for constraint, let's see, GID, constraint, foreign key, GID, references, games, parentheses, GID. Yeah, it would work. It would work just fine. That'd be the way I'd write it. This person is just writing primary key. So they're getting a little lazy with it, but then maybe they just, maybe they didn't want to fool with it. Let's see what they did. Create or replace procedure. What do we have here? Procedure, create player. Okay. How is this different from what we're used to seeing? I'm going to say it isn't, but then you're going to argue with me that it is. All right. Notice that the names of the procedures, I think this is one that I told my students to do, is to name your parameters such that you know by looking at the name what you're seeing. So I think I told them you might prepend an X to it if it's a parameter. So you're going to have layers and layers and layers of these things because it's going to get a lot worse than it does in SQL, in Microsoft SQL Server. It's bad enough there because where you have parameters, procedures, the parameter names, you have the local variable names, but at least in SQL Server, when you have a local variable name, it has that @ sign in front of it, so you can say, aha, that's a local variable. We don't have that here, right? So you have to name it something. You have to have a naming convention that lets you know what things are, or therein lies madness. I mean, what was that? What was that thing anyway? Then when you get over to the Visual Basic interface of this, you're going to find you have a whole nother layers of names over there, and they're all getting mixed up with each other and interchanging with each other. The nice thing about Oracle and its use is that the language in which you program the interface over there in the Visual Basic thingy is the same as you use here. The languages are the same, the syntax of it. So this code would run over there. Sometimes it does, which can also get confusing. Let's see what we have here. I have a parameter. Look, a parameter. Notice that these guys use parentheses and SQL Server does not, although you can put them in SQL Server. I don't recall whether I told you to put them there or not. You can put parentheses there. What kind of a parameter is this? It's an input parameter. It is of type varchar. Result is an output parameter, and it is of type int. Nothing much different. is. Okay, here's where we get a little different. What is that thing that I just highlighted there? That is a local variable. Notice where that local variable appears. In this block that comes after the is and before the begin. Okay, this language is a very rigorously block structured language. You don't just declare a variable any place you want to. You have to declare the variables in the block, in the declaration block. Sometimes you will see this on or about line 38 there. Sometimes you will see that in is, after is, you will see declare. That's a special kind of a procedure. But sometimes instead of creating the procedure, you'll just see declare, and then you declare your variables, and then a begin. I don't want to go into all of the little the variegations of this, but here is a local variable. So x's, if it begins with an x, it is a parameter. If it begins with a y, it's a local variable. Integer, I guess I should have used tiny int. He should select count into y from players. So here I'm checking, does this player name, does the user player name exist in players? Okay. And I had to say players dot PID. Sometimes we can get away with this. Select count. I think this is optional. I don't think I had to say players dot. I think I could have just said PID. That's just an SQL statement. Select count star into. Into is in SQL Server. I would have said y count gets count. So I would have just I would have said this a little bit differently. In SQL Server, it would look like y CNT. That's what it would have looked like in SQL Server. In this language, PLL, you say select into y count from players. Now, what I would like to say here would be if exists, select count from players, but I don't have that in this language. So it's, you know, everything's a trade-off. Then I have to say, well, if that count is greater than 0, then I have an error. Then result gets X result. It's the output. In other words, that's the error. It's a 1. Else, insert it. We use get date. Here we use sysdate, commit, and X result gets 0. I could have said X result gets 0. I usually, if I were writing this, I would have said X result gets 0 up here and not down here. Go ahead, please.
Is this the difference between the colon and the
yes, pointing out the assignment. Assignment, yes. The assignment in this language is the colon equal that is consistent with Pascal and modula 2. Here's another one. Notice that this is equality. The test for equality is different from the assignment statement. I personally prefer it when it is. For example, in C, you use a double equal here and a single equal. I don't care for it to be overloaded, but remember in transaction SQL, we would have used set. Then set X result equals 1. Case sensitivity is the same. It isn't. Yeah. SQL languages are not. Notice the difference in the if then else. There are 2 ways to look at an if then else. One of them says if something, usually there is no THEN, so if condition, and then just for TSQL, you don't write THEN. In this language, you do. If y count is greater than 0, then. Now, the thing that you get here is you do not have to have a begin end. For example, then, else. Notice that there are several statements on the else, but there is no begin and end. I could have put begin end. It wouldn't have hurt anything, but I don't need one. Why? Because they are bracketed by the else on one side and the end if on the other side. And so this is one of the competing ways. I don't like this one as well as I like just the if, then, else, and you have begin end on each of them. Whereas you just have one statement, you don't have to have a begin end. And that's the way C and Java and all those languages do it. This one is a little bit different. You have end if. What you get in these languages, if you have this format of the if then else, instead of just straight if then else, when you have a if then else if, you have a special construction of it that says that you only have to have one if, end if, to close it. So it's ELSIF. I'll see if I can find one here for you. Else. Notice that this if, then else, no begin, just come down. If, then else, end if, end if. This is the symbol to execute it. Oh, here it is right here. Else if, ELSIF. This drives me nuts. ELSIF. I'm always everlastingly misspelling this. Let's see, what is this? Oh, this is the function. Okay, here's a function, winner. It works about the same way. We have a character n returns a char. Begin, if they're equal, return T, ELSIF. And or. Then return one, else return two. End if. Notice that I have two ifs. If this, ELSIF this, but I only have one end if that ends them both. This is handy when you have a long case logic. If condition 1, then do this. Else if condition 2, do 2. Else if condition 3, do 3. Else if condition 4, do 4. You don't have to have end if, end if, end if, end if, end if you're using ELSIF. One end if kills them all. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of difference between the languages. They're very similar. The functions are functions, procedures are procedures, and they work just about the same. We use is instead of as. Instead of create or alter, it's create or replace. Here's the procedure play round. Here we have, by the way, this one has a true Boolean, true or false. The SQL Server does not have a data type Boolean. I don't need one. I can use tinyInt, make it 0 or not 0. What? Bit, I believe bit has gone the way of the dodo bird. Yeah, back in the old days, when did you program with bit? You used it in this one? Okay. Back in the old days, bit meant 1 bit, 0 or 1. And in a byte, it would store 8 bits. And it was found to be just too much trouble. Now, maybe they kept the term bit and they just used the tinyInt instead. bit was a 0 or a 1, and the idea was that you could have 8 bits inside of 1 byte, but the cost of accessing that one stinking little bit was so high that they just quit doing it.
Yeah, this is a bit type in SQL Server, just the integer bit if that is 1 or 0.
I suspect it's probably a tiny int, but it's some kind of an int. For a while they were toying with the idea that you could have a bit, but you have to go in and mask the thing out, and it's just it was just a nightmare of overhead. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about here? True or false. So we have the words true. We don't have true and false in SQL Server. I miss those. So if I want a loop that executes forever and then I'm going to break out of it, I have to say while 0 equals 0 or something like that. Here I can say while, I think I can say while true. I believe I can. Couple of things about it. If you have an in parameter, an input parameter, and I'm not sure how SQL Server handles this, but a parameter to a function that is declared as an in parameter. You cannot in this language, PLSQL, change that parameter. If you did, it is usually a mistake. There's no reason why the language should stop me, although it is generally a mistake. Okay. You can have an out parameter. An out parameter is only an out parameter. You cannot take its value inside the function. You have to only write it. So it's a write-only parameter. You cannot read it. And then you can have an in-out parameter. PLSQL uses what they call copy in and copy out. It is not a true pass by reference where they pass the memory address. If you know what I'm talking about there. Pass by reference usually means when you have an input-output parameter, it usually means that when you pass it in, you pass the address of it and you act on the address so you have a pointer. In this language, it copies them in and copies them back out. So it's a little bit slower. Again, we see our block structure. We have the is. We have all of our variables here. By the way, if you declare a cursor, you declare a cursor the same way in this language as you declare a cursor in TSQL. You would declare your cursor up here in the declaration block. So everything that you're going to use that you're declaring has to be up here in this block. If it's not here, you cannot declare it later. So I couldn't decide, oh, I need another variable and put it here. I would have to go back up and put it up here at the top. Everything else is play around. I don't know why this person didn't. This one's getting a little tedious. I'm sure I didn't write this code. I would have kept them in order, or maybe, I don't know, this could be old stuff. This stuff could be 10 years old. I don't remember writing it, but that doesn't mean I didn't. And so on. We can test it. Need to validate the plays. I guess I'm not doing it. I'm not sure what all this is. This is the sequence. Next val says gets that looks a little bit different than TSQL. The way I get the next value from the round sequence. For the most part, though, SQL is SQL. For the most part. I never said it was always thus. I never said it would always. I said that for by and large, you can run one on the other. You could port this over. Certainly the table creation would work. You'd have to fix some things about it. Let's see, I don't think you could do, I don't think you could get away with that in TSQL. You know, games, GID references games, although you can get away with that in Oracle. Questions? Well, let's see it work. RPS, okay. I want to say file. Save as. All right, so I'm going to go over here. And the name of that is, let's see, what is it that, is it clear? CLS, CLEAR, clear. Okay, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to execute it, start. And let's see, where is this guy? D colon. RPS, so that's the name of the file. So I'm essentially giving it the execute command. The execute command is start. I'll get a few errors right at the beginning, but they didn't hurt anything. What did I see at the beginning? Sorry, drop table rounds, got an error. Drop table games, got an error. Drop table players, drop sequence, got an error. And then I start creating them and notice that everything from here on goes smoothly, and they are created. So I should now be able to execute one of these procedures. Here, let's see, I'm going to create the table. All I need is a PID. So create player. Okay. And I need to let's see if I can do this. Declare. I need a R. This is my integer. Execute. Create player. No. Create player, open parentheses. What shall I name him? How about Bob? And I need to pass him the return value. I'm not sure what I did wrong here. That should have worked. Begin function, declare int. Anyway, now you see one of the problems with this that should have worked. I can get it. I'm sure it will work. because the procedure exists. I just need to get the parameters and everything right. It's been a few years since I wrote this. End of file, one of the following. Well, I'm not having much luck with that. As you can see, it's a little bit tricky. Once I get it down, get one of them down, get my parentheses in the right place. Perhaps it's not the parentheses at all. Perhaps it's declare. R. Begin. Execute. Create player. And let's see now. Okay. Oh, execute immediate. I needed to put that in there. I'll get that right in a minute, and I'll put it out there for you on the web page. I'm sure I have it somewhere to call the procedure. But anyway, this is an example of PLSQL. Notice that it is fairly cognitive, meaning that if you can write in one of them, you can probably write in the other one. Oh, let's see. I have going now. I have posted the requirements for the turn-in, and so go ahead and start turning them in so I can start working on them. And I don't doubt that I'm going to have to tweak them a little bit to make them work. That's okay. That's what I do. It's okay to ask for help on your project. And it's okay to ask me to look at it. And so, but you have to send it in to me before I can look at it. And then, so I'd appreciate it if you would try to get it running, but if you can't, then see if you can figure out where you're not. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered where you posted it. Oh, it's under RPS project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Modules, not
it's an assignment. If you guys want to do something with Oracle, I guess we can, but I don't really recommend that we load Oracle on our home machines. I'm afraid that we would get in too big of a mess with it, and I want to keep your keep your home machines running. And Oracle is known for crashing stuff. So, okay, let's see. We have a fairly cold night tonight. What time is it? It's about 7, getting close to 7. I'm gonna take a break and take questions. I'm not going to ask anything about Oracle on any kind of a final or anything like that. Oracle is just kind of for your information. It lends itself to this kind of a problem. Well, they all do. And so if I were changing the SQL Server into Oracle, well, all of the create table stuff should run. Had I written the create table statements as I was telling you to write them, as they should be written, they would, had you named your constraints and all of that, you could just pick them up and drop them over there. Sarah, do you need to go? Please. We're going to take a break here. I got people would like to step out for a minute. Comments?
Thank you for showing.
Go ahead. Tracy, is that you?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for, I was curious to see what the difference was. Thank you for showing it to us.
Yeah, there aren't that many differences. I mean, if you step back and kind of accept the fact that there are differences in the language, it's a little bit like listening to English with a Caribbean accent. It's still English, you know. So this is, it's different, but it's saying the same thing, and the way it's structured is just about the same way. And SQL, by the way, select from where, all of your, if you were to drop any of those queries from 2309, almost any of the queries, all of the outer joins and inner joins would do exactly the same thing. Let's see, I'd have to tweak a couple of things on the dates. So the dates I'd have to do. I think I actually ported that over to Oracle, that AP database. And it just didn't take me that long. I guess I worked on it about 45 minutes or so to get it to come over and run in Oracle. Yes, the question is, does Oracle have a set of built-in functions like we would expect to find in SQL Server? The answer is they're identical practically. There are some that are slightly different. The case and the IIS and the with cube and stuff like that don't work in Oracle, or they're different in Oracle. So Oracle has its own set of things that are each SQL implementation has its own dialects, and none of them, in theory, SQL is supposed to be SQL, but it just doesn't always work that way. But I should be able to take all of these create table commands and run them. The only thing is that this person got a little bit lazy here, and I'm not certain that that will run in SQL Server. I'm not sure that you can just say references games and have it pick up the name from there, but you can get away with that in Oracle. I'm not sure it's a good thing to do. Oracle is fussy about a comma at the end. SQL Server will let you have a comma here at the after the last one. Oracle will definitely not. Oracle, it will not let you get away without having a semicolon at the end of your statement. Oracle will not let you get away with having a blank line inside your statement like that. It will throw a fit. Okay. So that's why I've been after people and saying, don't, well, in 1309 I am, don't have blank lines inside of your statement. By the way, MySQL will also do the same thing. It will barf if it encounters a completely blank line. So if you want to put a blank line, put a dash dash on it and make a comment out of it. Others? Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap up there for tonight, and then I'm here to take questions. And if you want me to look at your code, you'll need to zip it up and send it to me. And I guess you can do that. So if you want me to look at your code, you just send it to me in a message. And
Finalized by November 13th when we're reading it.
what's that?
Everything needs to be finalized by November 13th.
But well, no, I think I put that on there. I'm not sure whether we're going to try to split it into two or not. I'm going to kind of try to see where everybody is on it. I don't know right now. I don't have a good feel how everybody's code is coming along. I'd like to see a little bit more of where the class is. Okay, so if you want to send me your code, I'll take a look at it, and we'll decide as a group whether we're going to go any further with this rock, paper, scissors or not. I do want to go to I do want to have a user that is that public user that does not have any rights at all except for the ability to execute. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause the recording, and questions can come now. I might start the recording. Okay, recording pausing. Okay, resuming recording. Students have asked questions about the turn-in on this guy. I'm going to go ahead and kill this. I say I'm going to kill it. Goodbye. Go away. And what the idea is, what are we turning in? And let me see what it says. I have my let me see if I can find a okay, RPS files. And so I've got create tables, create sequences, create functions, create procedures. And I'm not telling you that you have to have all of these, just like this. I have one called create views. For some reason, I've zipped this one up. Grant execute. I don't know exactly what I have here, but for example, if I'm using these probably 1 through 8, and then grant execute, I don't know why I put that one as 12. So what I would probably do is zip these guys and turn them in. And then when I grade them, I will execute them in that order. So I'll go and I'll run create tables, then I will have all of your tables. So what I'll do is I'll drop my database, recreate my database, and then start running yours so that nothing collides. Okay.
Really makes sense to me. I guess my question is, how does that translate to the assignments?
That's what I'm going to look at right now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Question is, how does that translate to what it says in the assignment? I don't know. Let's go see what it says in the assignment. I might need to change that. Faculty. Modules. RPS project. So it's this one right here. Turn in. Okay, I think it's these guys right here, right? RPS part 1, RPS project. Okay, that one looks pretty straightforward. And let's see. So this is to try to part 1. Link servers is not a assignment. Part 2 is the RPS is an SQL assignment. Now what's part 3? Okay, this is the one probably giving you the problem. This is where you turn in your forms. Please include the SQL scripts. In other words, I want for each of these, when you turn it in, please turn in your SQL scripts with it so that I can just run it all. Even if you've already turned them in once, go ahead and zip them and turn everything in. Zip the files, turn in the creation code. I don't know what. Now, well, part 2 and part 3. Oh, part 3. Part 3, I'm saying we're going to put the triggers in there. So part 3 has triggers. Part 3 is asking you to, I need to cover transaction locking. That'll be something I'll do next time.
Does that mean I shouldn't turn that in until we cover transaction locking?
You can turn it in. I'm going to cover the transaction locking in a little more detail. Trigger gives us some background on this problem.
And I want to say the difference between 1 and 2. I think it was confusing to me as to whether or not in part 1 you wanted us to do errata. I don't think you did, but then 2 we do table errata.
Right.
Do you care if we turn in part 1 with errata? All if it's
that makes perfect sense to me to turn it in at once. I want to demonstrate a trigger. I think I've put a lot of this into that last one. Let me go. Okay, so this is the last one. So this is the final turn in, and I didn't put any points on this. So this is what I'm looking for at the end. So I think I'm just going to probably get rid of the other one. Why did I put points 0?
You mean the Visual Basic one? Because this is the Visual Basic one.
Well, this is the final project. So this is everything. So zip everything, zip all of the SQL files into a single folder, and the Visual Studio files into a different folder. Okay. In other words, don't commingle them into one folder because they're 2 different languages. So I'll need to run all of your SQL files and then run all of your Visual Studio files. I'm going to begin. I'll create a brand new database called RPSDB, and it's going to be owned by the user running the scripts, me. If it's not obvious, give me a text file. I will create a loopback server on my machine. I'm going to name mine loopback, just like we did in the examples, because when I create that loopback server, that's easier for me to create than to ask you to create it. You're just going to use it. I'll create a user named public user, just like this, PUBLIC capital USER, with password of fishbait, spelled just like that. SQL files, include them. It's if you have a script that populates the tables with test data, this is good. However, please don't put that code into the creation scripts. Just create a clean database, and then if you want to give me that population script, that's fine. Tables, do they have reasonable constraints, primary keys, foreign keys, etc.? Do the procedures protect the tables? Errors that are detected and blocked by the procedures not logged. Are there functions? I want to see at least one table returning function. I think you will have two. Triggers, please demonstrate the use of triggers. Okay, now we can spend a whole lot of time on triggers. We don't need to trigger everything. Okay, so it's not necessary to trigger inserts. So let's see, well, inserts, I got to be able to insert. I would trigger deletes. In the real world, I'd trigger everything except insert. So you can't delete, you can't update, you can't do anything except insert, and only that from the procedure. But I just want you to demonstrate a trigger. Let's write a trigger to disable deletes. I think would be the simplest. If you have done something different, that's fine, and then we'll log the attempts to the errata table. So if all we're doing is, if you try to delete, it should end up in the errata table. The rest of them, well, if you can do one trigger, you could do them all. We're going to grant execute on the procedures to public user. And I believe you will have to grant select on the table valued functions. For Visual Studio, zip the folder. Let me get out of this window here. How many points is this? Call it 400 because this is about the final turn in. Save. I'm going back to my modules. This one is confusing to me. Let's see, it's part 3 that was causing the confusion.
No, it's the Visual Basic one, right? Because isn't,
No. Okay,
that's a duplicate.
Visual Basic will get turned in at the end. Remove. So the turn in at the final one, the turn in is the Visual Basic. Visual Basic, I'm looking for it to work, and I'm looking for it to log in with as the public user.
It needs to do everything that you demonstrated, right? Create a game.
Uh-huh.
Rounds.
Right. For and I would say, what would you need to have on this guy? As we go on further, I'm probably, depending on, we still have a few more class meetings. I would like to see us develop a few views that gave us some statistics about the game, so we could run these views. I don't see them necessarily running from the Visual Basic. When I run a report in, now we have a report generator. I'm not real fond of those report generators. Basically, I like to get everything in a SQL view and drop it into Excel and format it there. I find Excel, I can do it faster there than I can write the report, because I spend more time fooling with the report generator than I do. Yeah, I can get it. I can put it into Excel. Doesn't change every time I go to a different database. I can still just grab it and drop it into Excel. So I find that that's the best for me. But I'd like to think about, remember we talked about some of those views on one of the lectures, and I would like to go back and revisit that. But basically, right now, I'm trying to get a baseline on where we are. Okay, so give me some code.
Can we have one more week for the one with the Visual Basic?
Yeah, why? When did I say? I'm sorry.
November 13th.
Oh, November 13th. Yeah, you're right. Oh, okay.
Well, it's a personal thing. I'm going out of town next week.
Personal thing. Yeah. I'm pretty open on the time. I'm going out of town too, for that matter. Let's see. So what have we got? The 13th and the 20th is going to be Thanksgiving. The 27th will be we'll have one more class meeting after that. So I'm going to put it due on the 27th. How's that? Make
Very
people
nice.
a little bit happier. Okay. Look, I'm not trying to this class is a little bit kind of make it up as we go along. And the whole idea here is it's a little bit like you would find a graduate class taught, in that you make your own project. So a lot of this project you are researching and you are building. And I'm going to look at, I've given you some code, but you got to put it together. Okay. So you make it.
Actually, Thanksgiving's but just to let you know, it's the 28th. It's late this year.
Thanksgiving is when?
The 28th. So it's 1 week after that. It's before, since the 1st was on a Friday, it pushes it out to the 28th. The 4th
Oh, that's
Thursday.
October.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't think it matters.
We do not have class on the 27th, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it there on the 27th anyway. Yeah, you can turn it in. There's no reason why you can't turn it in. So we don't have class on the 27th, which is good because traffic is a nightmare that night. I wasn't going to have, I don't know whether they did that because I was the one that was complaining about it or not, but I was saying I'm not going to come in on the night before Thanksgiving. We're just going to have to meet online. I don't know, maybe they just said, yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording then again. I guess we got that settled up. Yeah, by all means, if there's something that isn't making sense, like that date of turn in was a little too early. I tend to be that when I program, I tend to make things work, and then I go back in later and try to make it look pretty. I don't always, usually I pass that off to somebody else. I usually have if I'm the programmer, I will be the one that I get the data flowing, and then I pass it off to a designer who will make my web page look nice. I make it work, he or she does the human interface. And that usually works a lot better because I'm not very good at that kind of stuff. Anyway, okay, I'm pausing. Okay. You guys taking off?